So good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining us again on our UK and Ireland VCF webinar. My name is Carl Barrington. I'm one of the solution architecture managers here with VMware by Broadcom, and today we're going to be joined by Chris Lewis, one of our specialist solution architects around getting the most out of VCF operations. But before I hand over to Chris, just a reminder, I know we called it out briefly last month, but the video library from Explore in Vegas will be available on the 1st of October. So if there were sessions which you'd seen the titles for, but you've not been able to watch them, then please go and register for that. Look at the link, which I'll post in the chat later, so you can sign up for that, or just Google the VMware Explore video library, and that will take you through to the relevant section. So next slide, Chris. So hopefully some of you were able to attend Explore on Tour in London last week. Feedback I've heard has been really positive, both on the day from customers and subsequently. Only comment I did hear was that there was a lot of stairs. I know there were lifts, but I think quite a few people did clock up a few steps going up and down potentially the 4 floors. So hopefully you enjoyed the event. If you weren't able to provide feedback on the day, I know there was a mechanism for that. If you have any other comments, feel free to put them in the survey at the end. Just reference the Explore on Tour, and I'll be sure to feed them back. The other comment from last week was obviously some people weren't able to secure tickets because we were oversubscribed. So I'm informed that we are looking for a larger venue for next year. If you are still potentially wanting to be able to try and see an Explorer on tour and your business is able to support the travel, we've still got registrations open for Paris on the 15th of October, which is obviously the closest, and then Frankfurt on the 11th and 12th of October. So feel free, if you are able to attend those, to go and join. So feel free, as usual, to ask any questions in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to go through those. And that segue, I'll hand over to yourself, Chris.
Okay, so let's move forward on this. So every good presentation starts with a disclaimer. I don't think I'll need it, but just in case I do, it's our standard disclaimer. Not going to really talk about anything at all about anything future, so hopefully I won't need it at all. So welcome to this webinar. It's about getting the most out of VCF operations. I say VCF operations, but actually most of the things I'm going to be talking about today, if you're coming from an Aria operations world, then I think probably it will also work there as well. I'm going to do the demos in VCF operations 9, but I think the vast majority, if not all of the demos I'm going to be doing will work in Aria operations 8.x as well. So if you're coming from that world, then that's good. Trying to do it so it's the least amount of effort. So it's, when you get VCF operations, whether you're coming from a net new install, an upgrade, or you've never had it before, it can be very daunting. So I'm just trying to sort of give some tips and some tricks that I've learned over the years for people to hopefully use it more efficiently. Just a very quick agenda. So we're going to go top 5. We might get to there is a 6th one, and we might get to it, but if we don't, then we'll stick with the top 5. So we're just going to have a look at a few out-of-the-box dashboards, which I think can be really powerful, and probably should be favorited in your ops instance. We'll show you how to do that. We'll show you how to share those dashboards as well with your friends, if that's what you want to do. We'll look at fine-tuning, capacity monitoring. Quite a lot of conversations I have with customers sort of center around capacity monitoring and capacity planning. So we'll have a look at how we can make some tweaks to your capacity module so that you get the most value from that. We're going to look at some of the Automation Central stuff and how you can schedule things so you don't have to get up at night to do that. And then we are going to look at creating some basic supermetrics. Now, supermetrics can be really can be really daunting again, because it's math. But hopefully we'll break it down a little bit and give you some basic examples for you to sort of consume, and then hopefully move forward and do your own supermetrics. And then finally, we'll look at how we can sort of customize your view of your vSphere world. So, how we can create, going almost back to the start and looking at dashboards and how we can create views and how we can create custom dashboards as well. So hopefully, everybody will find at least one thing today that they didn't know, or at least will be helpful. Okay, just by way of introduction, my name is Christopher Lewis, and I work in the UK and Ireland. I'm part of a specialist solutions architect team, colloquially named the UK the VCF specialists. My specialism sits around Aria, or the artist form known as Aria Suite, so VCF Operations, VCF Automation. I do have a plethora of knowledge across the portfolio. Worked at VMware by Broadcom for the last 6 years, or sorry, Broadcom for the last 6 years, and VMware before, and then but I also have worked with VMware technologies for the last 20 odd years in my sort of career. If you do need to reach out, and then feel free to reach out from socials. If you do have a core account team and you want to reach out via them, that's fine too, because they'll contact me and get me involved if necessary. So for those who are coming in or listen to this webinar, having never used operations before, I just wanted to give a very high level overview of where we are from a VCF perspective and where we are from an operations perspective before we dive into the main part of the webinar. It's going to be mostly demos after these first couple of slides, so hopefully that will intrigue everybody. So VCF 9, the new platform that we've introduced, builds on all of our history around virtualization and cloud management, and provides this single private cloud platform with the ability to deliver a multitude of workload types, whether that be Kubernetes, whether that be virtual machines, whether that be services, database as a service with DSM, and private AI workloads, and then behind that waterline, or below that waterline, sorry, there is lots of things going on around the platform, and we use VCF Operations and VCF Automation to make sure that the underlying infrastructure that's based on the core components we all know and love around vSphere and NSX and vSAN are all working in harmony together, and making sure that we're giving that a best of breed private cloud in a performant way. Um, Oops, pressed the wrong button. Sorry, apologies. When we look at VCF operations, I mean, it sits in sort of three pillars. And we're going to sort of go across all those pillars really today. So not going to really dive into any of them in particular, but we have that fleet management capability that came into VCF 9 from an SDDC manager perspective and an Aria Suite lifecycle perspective, bringing all of those capabilities into that single interface. We have the sort of the stalwart sort of capabilities of the ops platform, the ability to create dashboards and alert and monitor and things like that, which I've been there for the majority of the product's life. And then we're also introducing from a VCF 9 perspective, that ability to have security management, where it would be auditing certificates, drift, and config management, and sort of SecOps as well. So the ability to again really have that single pane of glass that allows you to sort of monitor that platform that is VCF, and to make sure it's running at its most optimum and performant, to give you your customers the best platform to run their workloads, essentially. Okay, so we're going to start with the top 5 dashboards. I'm going to look the top 5 dashboards to tell your friends about. I'm going to look at just a few that I've highlighted in my environment, I'm running again VCF 9. We're going to look at the vSphere daily checks, and we're going to look at the ES6i configuration. We're going to look at the Skyline operational overview dashboard, then the VCF capacity, VM capacity, and actually the sixth. And the sixth one is about dashboard sharing, so we'll look at that as well. So let me just switch to my environment. Hopefully you can see my environment now. Okay, so we're just logged in as a local administrator, not doing anything too fancy around identity management or anything like that. We're just going to use the default admin. And for those who don't know, the dashboards sit under this infrastructure operations tab, and actually from a VCF 9 perspective, they've been consolidated with views and reports. They used to be in a separate location, but now they're all together with dashboard views and reports. And there are a number of dashboards that are out of the box. These are all out of the box. I haven't added any to here at all. I haven't created any custom dashboards. They're all available out of the box for people to consume. And there are, I'd say, a plethora of those. What I have done before the call is I've gone and favorited the dashboards that I'm going to talk about today. We'll start with the sort of the vSphere daily checks dashboard. And for me, this is all about from an SRE perspective, and lots of customers I talk about to ask, what do we do on or what can we do on a daily checks perspective? And there's an out of the box dashboard. Now it won't always be 100% everything you're looking for, and that's why we can customize dashboards. But hopefully, it will give you a good indication of what you're looking for. So we've got red alerts, we've got orange alerts, we've got yellow alerts, so critical warnings, so we can see how many over time have happened. We've got our vSphere clusters, so that we can see the capacity and the things that are going wrong. So we've got code stop, we've got swap memory, we've got packet drops. Again, all color coded to give us an idea if it's a problem or not. We've got contention from a CPU perspective, VM memory, contention, latency. There's lots and lots on this dashboard that you can use to really understand your environment and whether or not there's something you need to do. Obviously, if you've got lots of alerts, then you probably would have been looking at those anyway. But just as a high-level overview, we can see those. We've got nothing going on really in my environment, so the middle bit isn't sort of really doing much, but we've got total CPU utilization, total memory, disk IOPS, we've got if there's any vCenter alarms. So again, and right at the bottom here, there's a little sort of text field that tells you what the purpose of the dashboard is, which is always really helpful when we provide that. So again, a really good dashboard that a single glance shows you what may or may not be an issue in your environment. We have the ES6i configuration dashboard, and I like this dashboard. And it's not so much in my environment because my environment's brand new VCF 9 environment. But if I'm coming from a brownfield, sorry, or a legacy estate where I've got multiple versions of ESX or vCenter or a VCF, then I can start to see the different types of hardware models I've got. Mine's an embedded environment, so all the same rules like a VMware virtual machine. The versions of VSX I've got, and again, because I'm running a sort of a brand new environment, they're all the same. And the build versions are the same, and the BIOS versions, because it's a virtual machine, are the same. But you get the idea that if I was running multiple clusters at different levels, potentially at the same version, I could be running an ESXi 8 estate, or I could be using a 9 estate, and even those would be you'll be surprised how many different versions you will find of, for example, 8 update 3, or 8 update 1. There are still incremental small versions. You might patch some things and not others. So especially if you're adding new hosts all the time, you might not be mature enough from an organization perspective to standardize on the image. It may be, or you've downloaded the latest image and you haven't upgraded the previous ones. Again, it really helps to be able to see the differences you've got. If I've got more, how many have got 1 gigabit NICs? Maybe I've misconfigured a NIC. Maybe it's running at it's a 10 gigabit NIC and it's running at 1 gigabit, and you don't know that. So you can start to see storage paths, the amount of CPU cores I've got, or gigahertz of memory, whether SSH is enabled on. I've got 7 hosts, so it's enabled on all 7 hosts. This is again a demo environment, so I haven't got to worry about that. But maybe I've got 7 hosts and it's enabled on 2 of them and it shouldn't be. Maybe the NTP daemon isn't enabled on everything. Maybe the DCUI shouldn't be enabled, and again, it is because it's a demo environment, and the same with the shell. But again, it's really quick and easy to see, knowing how many I've got, where there's a problem or misconfiguration. I don't have anything in maintenance mode or anything powered off or disconnected, so I'm not seeing anything there. And then just again, a high level overview of all the ESXis, how many sockets I've got, how many cores I've got. Again, this is running, actually, it's one of the hands-on labs. You can see the bottom one here. This was the one that's running Aria automation, so minimum of 24 cores. So all the other ones don't need as many CPUs. So the top 3 there, the 8-core ones, are the workload domain, and the bottom 4 are the management domain. But we because of the size of VCF automation, we pin that to a single host and give it enough capability to hopefully not impact anything else. And again, you can see ESXi version CPU models, really easy, really simple, easy to use dashboard, and really, really powerful. Now, obviously in VCF 9, we have this VCF Health and Diagnostics, the artist, made up of the artist formerly known as Skyline, but we still include the Skyline operational overview dashboard, and I still think it's a really good dashboard. Again, from a configuration perspective, the ability to see, how if I've got DRS configured, should I have DRS configured? In a really simple way of seeing it across a fleet. So it's not just single instance, VCF instance, not even a single workload domain. It's across multiple workload domains, across multiple fleet instances, the ability to see all of that configuration and making sure it's the same. Now, obviously, we have config drift as well, but maybe you've decided not to use config drift from that perspective. But you can, again, in VCF 9, use config drift, and in VCF 5.2.1 as well. So HA mission control, BIOS versions again, vendors. It's just a high level overview of how my environment is running and configured, should I say. We've then got moving away from sort of the configuration. We can then look at capacity. So we've got VCF capacity overview. And I like this dashboard because again, it gives me colors and easy to see, because if everything was the same color, it would be very difficult to know when there's a problem. So for example, here, apparently I have no, in my management domain, I have no capacity remaining, which is probably correct, to be honest, because we shrink that down as much as possible. But it's telling me I've got 2 vCenters, 2 clusters, 2 data centers, 2 data stores, 7 hosts we talked about before. I'm running 29 virtual machines. I've got most of my hosts are 8 CPU sockets. I've got a total of 92 cores. Sorry, I've got 8 CPU sockets in total, because I've got 7 hosts, 6 with 1 and 1 with 2, and a total of 92 cores, a terabyte of RAM being used, and 6 terabytes of disk space being consumed. So really high level values that we can see. And then I can look at my capacity and my cluster capacity. So here I've clicked on my data center. It's telling me about my single management domain I've got in there. If I click on my workload domain, everything else gets updated, and I can see that things are slightly changing. I've still got some capacity remaining there now in my workload domain, because I'm not running many workloads. It's a base hands-on lab pod that I haven't deployed anything into. And then again, from that cluster, I've got those 3 ESXi hosts as part of that cluster. And then I can start seeing the number of virtual machines and capacity remaining from that host perspective. And again, if I change that back to the management domain, all of the dashboard should change as well. So again, it's just giving me a really quick overview of what's happening. Again, I've moved to 4 hosts there, and all the virtual machines, all of these sort of the cloud management virtual machines that are running in there, giving me that information. So again, we can see that there's some problems potentially. Not that I'm going to fix those problems, because if anybody knows about hands-on labs, they get destroyed every time you click on the end button. So it's there. Actually, it makes a good example of how your environment could be, and so I don't need to fix anything there. And finally, because we're in the world of VCF now, there is also a VCF capacity dashboard. And again, this is available, sorry, VM capacity dashboard, sorry. The VCF capacity dashboard is also available in 5.2 as well. I checked that earlier. And then we've got the VM capacity dashboard. So we're looking above the waterline. If I had application virtual machines, and I have got a few application virtual machines, but a lot of these will also be the virtual machines running the platform. But again, I can see from either from a vSphere World perspective, and vSphere World is basically everything in vCenter or in vSphere, and then I've got my management domain, and then I've got my workload domain sitting there as well. And again, as I click on the different things within that list view, the dashboard updates, and I can see how things are performing. So for example, in this workload domain that I'm clicked on, I've got a couple of edge virtual machines in that workload domain. I've got a snapshot virtual machine that's used for one of the demos, an Ubuntu virtual machine. We've got some Kubernetes clusters, got a couple of Linux virtual machines. We're running Orchestrator there. There's the supervisor control plane virtual machine and some of the VCLS virtual machines that are running there. And I think this is one of the virtual machines I deployed earlier, just as an example of what I could do to give us some information. So again, 5 dashboards. Now, people may disagree with me, and that's completely fine, because, as I said, there are literally probably not, maybe 100, probably not 100, but there are lots and lots of different dashboards that you can use. And really, it's about identifying the ones that are important to you, and that will be different for every customer. Now, the one thing I wanted to share before I move on was, let's take, for example, the vSphere Daily Check dashboard. Maybe you want to share that with other people in your organization. Now, obviously, I've favorited it, so I've got that little star there, so it appears in my favorite. But maybe I want to share that with other people, and maybe I don't, but I don't want to give them access to VCF Operations. So what I can do is I can share this dashboard as well as any other dashboard that's created or configured, and I can share that in multiple ways. I can use a URL, so I can create a URL and I can choose it, the length of that URL or the longevity of that URL. So we'll choose never expire as an example, and I can copy that link. I can go and create an incognito window or a private window because I'm using Firefox. I can copy that link in, and what I will get is a read-only version of that dashboard. So it can't be changed. The content can't be changed. It might take a little while to turn up, but people can see that without having to log on. I think that's a really powerful, neat feature that's been around for a while. But for those people coming in new to VCF, then that's a good feature to be able to share dashboards. And again, I can click on anything in here. It's interactive. It's live data coming from VCF Operations, but nobody can change anything. Again, really powerful, and you can do that to the end of the dashboards. And if you find that link has been compromised, then you can delete it, renew it. Remembering that actually to use that link, you have to have access to internal DNS. It's not an external facing URL, it's an internal facing URL. So, but if it does get compromised by a team you don't want to see it, then you can just remove it. Apologies. You can email it, you can embed it in another dashboard. So if you've got like a centralized website you want people to go and look at, then you can do that as well. And if you do want people to be able to log on and access that dashboard for role-based access control, you can do that too. So you can give people access to that particular dashboard or multiple dashboards, only those dashboards, nothing else, and then they'll be able to see those. And finally, if you want to export it, and typically this is for when you create your own dashboards, you can export that and move that to another VCF instance of VCF Operations instance if you want to. There are, from an Aria 8 perspective, there are ways to do that with Lifecycle Manager. But you can export it and save it in a GitHub repository or something like that if you want to as well. Okay, so let me just switch back to my presentation. I'm going to switch back over here. Hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. I think I am. Let me just double check.
Yeah, it's fine, Chris.
Yes, I am. Yeah, cool. Okay. So now I want to talk about fine-tuning capacity monitoring. And again, we're only going to stay on a couple of slides and then we're going to switch straight back to the demo. But I want to talk about two things. And from a specialist organization perspective, we've been doing some VCF experience days over the last year. And quite a lot of the time, I talk about these two topics and I'm going to talk about now, and people look at me in a blank way, even though they are seasoned operations administrators, because it's not quite detailed, but it can be quickly missed if you're not paying attention. So one of the things I want to talk about is business hours. So the ability to configure when we use or when operations use capacity metrics. So by default, all capacity metrics, all metrics are collected 24/7, every 5 minutes, and averaged over sort of 20, I think it's 20 entries over 5 minutes and then collected and stored. But maybe your applications or your workloads running on a particular cluster, they're not busy 24/7. Maybe they're busy Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But when you're collecting metrics over 24 hours, 7 days a week, those hours that are not being used can skew the capacity metrics because you are two of those days might be completely maybe completely static. Nothing's happening, no customers are connecting to it, and therefore those idle times will bring down the average capacity values. And then maybe because it's idle from 5 p.m. all the way around to 8 a.m. in the morning, those metrics can sort of affect those idle metrics can affect available capacity or forecast capacity, because you need to be able to know when you want to base forecast and monitoring on when the workloads are busy. So we'll look how to do that. And basically what you can do is you can tweak your policy to be able to say, well, actually collect metrics all the time, alerts and everything else like inventory all the time, but actually just worry about capacity in this particular time window. And what that means is that your capacity and your time remaining and stuff like that is a lot more fine-tuned to the applications or the workloads that you're running. We'll look at that in a second. Just one more slide. So then we're going to look at utilization peaks. So when and there's three types of peaks, and this is sort of if anybody came to my previous session on capacity, I sort of covered these slides as well, but I just wanted to sort of go forward and then show you how to configure it. So we have three types of peaks within ops. When we talk about capacity, we have momentary peaks, those things that happen and then are gone almost as quickly as they came, and we sort of ignore those because they may be an anomaly. If the peak comes and it stays for a few collection cycles and goes again, then we call that a sustained peak, and that may impact the capacity forecast. And then if you've got that momentary peak that happens regularly, so let's say every hour on the hour, it peaks and then comes down again, we call that a periodic peak, and that again will impact the capacity model. But out of the box, we ignore all peaks. Sorry, we ignore all of the momentary peaks. So let me correct that. The momentary peaks we ignore. But what we can do is we can tweak the capacity model to include the peaks if that's what you want to do. It's entirely up to you, again, how you configure your capacity model. And then I haven't got a slide on it, but we're going to talk about risk level as well, and we'll see that in the demo. So we're going to look at some of those capacity management features. We're going to review the business hours, and then we're going to look at peak focus and risk levels in this next demo. So again, let me just switch over to back to my environment, and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so we're back in our environment. I'm looking at capacity, so we're going to go down to the capacity. And again, if you're using an older version of VCF or an older version of sort of operations, it may be in a slightly different location, but essentially it's the same things we're looking at. So here again, I've got two sort of workload workload domains. One's a management domain and one's a workload domain. Now there are a couple of ways to do this. I've only got a single policy, so I'm just going to use this way. But before I switch over, what you can do is you can go, if I can remember, it is configurations. We can look at policy definition, and we can look at the default policy. We can edit the default policy, and if I remember correctly, it is in the capacity section. So capacity settings is, oh, maybe not risk levels. Well, there's risk levels. So here in the policy, we'll look at, but we'll look at what its settings in a moment. But so there's the risk levels and there's business hours. But and the reason you want to do it in the policy is because you might have different policies per workload domain, or applications. What I'm going to do is, as I've only got a single workload, a single policy active at the moment, I'm just going to go through this part here because it's slightly easier to consume from that perspective, and it's slightly more user friendly, I think, because you've got a single policy. I'm just going to click on this configuration details, and there we have the settings again, and it's going to tell me I'm going to change this policy. So if I had another policy that was on my workload domain, and I clicked on the same thing, let's say that was workload domain policy. It's not its default policy, but if that was workload domain policy, this is basically updating the policy without having to go into the configuration and the policy and seeing all those other settings that I really might not be interested in right now, but being able to do it. So let's go back here. So we can see that we've basically run out of capacity. So we're going to click on the configuration details, and we're going to ignore the criticality threshold because we want to talk about risk level. So risk level, and what we've got is there's a few things. There's conservative and aggressive. And what conservative means is you can see the blue bubble hopefully on the screen, and these are what we call the upper and low. So the upper bound here and the lower bound projection around capacity. The line in the middle is if I carried on doing what I was doing for my capacity, growth over time would look like that. And as we can see, the blue bubble upper capacity sits here. So where this black line across here is where capacity runs out, and the red line above it is saying, well, you've run out and you need to find something else. Now, when that blue dot appears and a line attached goes across that black line, that basically means you need to buy new hardware. If you or buy new hardware or reclaim some resources. So we're not going to talk about reclamation today. We talked about in the last session about capacity and how we can reclaim resources, either undersized, so either by taking oversized virtual machines and reducing their specification, or reclaiming idle virtual machine snapshots and so on and so forth. But at the moment, we're sort of semi in the middle as much as we can be out of 6. So we're on this option here. And if I go to conservative, what it does is it brings the bubble closer, which basically means I want to be told that I've run out of capacity before I've actually run out of capacity. So bringing it closer to where I am now. So because I'm more conservative, I want to make sure that I've got enough capacity, and so I'm told that I'm running out of capacity a little bit more. But actually, the blue line, the dark blue dotted line, is where my capacity actually is. And as I move down the spectrum there, or the line, sorry, across that blue dot moves further and further and further away. Now, when I go here, this is conservative level 1, and that basically means I've gone basically off the screen saying I'm almost aggressive in my sort of upper and lower bounds, and I'm happy that I'm sweating my assets, if you like, and moving further and further away from today, which is this dotted line going up or down. Hopefully you can see that. But I'm okay with that because actually my provisioning engine for new hosts is really quick and I can get them in. Maybe I've got them sitting there. Maybe I've got some hosts sitting there ready to be sort of onboarded into VCF, and that's fine. Now, if I go to aggressive, what that does is that takes away that upper and lower projection bounds completely and says, well, when this average capacity goes across that line, that's when you're going to tell me I've run out of capacity. Obviously, you get warnings beforehand. You're at 50% capacity or 60% capacity or 80% capacity, however you've set those up. But that's the conservative level. And most customers are probably more conservative than aggressive. So they either stay on level 3 or move up to level 5. Very rarely do I see a customer that's on the aggressive path to say, actually, I want to really sweat my assets all the way as much as I can. So again, by default, it's on the sort of the 3 level. So 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Typically, most customers are on 4 or 5. And then also what we can do is we can take peak focused as well. So we can say, well, actually, if there are peaks, we want to include those into the calculation. And as you can see, the peaks show here, but they sort of, it's a obviously a fabricated upper and lower bounds of my capacity planning, but they're taken into consideration when I click that peak focused. So that's one thing or two things you can do to help tune your capacity model. The other thing, as we talked about, is this business hours perspective. And what I can do, as I say, by default, it's 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. And I can do set my time zone either for my host time zone or a particular time zone. And then I can say, well, actually, I'm interested in Monday to Friday from, let's say, 8 a.m. to 6. And I can, as long as they're all the same, I can just click set to all, and there we go. So now I'm going to collect inventory, I'm going to collect alerts 24/7, but capacity, I'm only going to concentrate on the capacity planning for those, and I still collect capacity metrics, but I only, from a capacity forecast and a management perspective, those are the ones that are most relevant. And I can save that, and that will go away. And it's not going to make any changes from my perspective because I'm out. The only way for me to make changes would be to reclaim some resources, which I can't do in my workload domain or my management domain, or use allocation model to tell it that I've got more CPUs than I've got or more memory than I've got. But I'm not going to do that today. Okay, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I know there's some questions in the chat, and I'll get to those towards the end. Apologies if you heard. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to the presentation just for a second, and then we're going to move on with a demo. So I'm going to switch back to my presentation. Okay. So next thing we're going to talk about is the Automation Central. Again, it came in the eight time frame. So it's not a new thing in VCF 9. So those people who are using sort of Operations 8 can still do hopefully everything I'm going to show you. But what I'm going to use that for is essentially, and I remember when I was a consultant back in the day, having to sort of sit up in the middle of the night, wait to power something off, or run a PowerShell script maybe, and hope it worked. But so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at Automation Central, and then we're going to create a couple of tasks that will set up but probably won't run. Just to give you an idea of what you can do. I might try and run them actually if I can get the timing right. So going to create some tasks to power virtual machines via tag, and then we're going to create a quick custom group, and we're going to then power those back on via custom group as well. So again, let me just switch back to the demo. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. So Automation Central, again, maybe in a slightly different location on your version of Operations. If I can remember where it is, there is. So Automation Central, it's around about the same place. Okay, so Automation Central is essentially a way to schedule tasks, whether that be config drift, bill sending, powering on, powering off, right size. We looked at, again, last session, we talked about capacity planning, right sizing, reclamation, and actually you can schedule that task if you want to. And the really good thing about it is that you can, what we'll see is we're going to create something that's based on tags. And then when it's about to run that job, that's when it calculates what machines are going to be powered off. So it's not static. We can be static if we want to, but we're going to say, well, every machine that is got a tag that says shut down equals yes. Oh, it might be true, I think. And we're going to power down. So let me just double check to make sure what I did earlier, because I put the tags on earlier. So we're going to go into our workload domain. And it really depends on how you want to add these tags. I added them manually. You can use PowerShell scripts. You can deploy them and add tags onto them. But essentially what I've got is this HOL snapshot. I've got this shutdown equals true. So we can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this automation. As I said, we've got reclamation activities. So if I want to do reclamation, I could delete old snapshots, delete idle virtual machines, power off idle virtual machines, delete powered off VMs. If I want to do that, I can do right sizing as well, downsize, and so on and so forth, or scale up. What I'm going to do, the billings, and in the billings, config drift check is scheduling that config drift. What I'm going to do actions, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose. We're going to put name on first of all, so we're going to do power off VMs. And typically, I see customers doing this for development workloads. As an example, every Friday afternoon, a power for everything that's tagged as development. I've just called it shutdown for now, for demo purposes. But maybe what customers do in the public cloud potentially is over the weekend. If there's no developers working, why are they running workloads? Because it's costing them money. And in the private cloud perspective, if you're doing chargeback, showback, or shameback, as I like to call it, and you're being charged, or you're charging people, it's a good idea to give them an option. Say, well, actually, if you power down your workloads, the price of that workload is based on its utilization, and as you're not utilizing it, freeing up capacity for me to do other things at the weekend with things I need to do, then you're not going to get charged. So that's always a good thing. So we're going to do virtual machines. We're going to take that action, and again, we've got power on, power off, reboot, or suspend. But we're going to just do power off on this one. We're going to click next. And here we're going to add the whole entire fleet. In fact, no, we'll just add the workload domain just in case. I don't want to turn anything off I shouldn't do. But you can add any of these. I can, if I had a custom group, sorry, I could do that as well. It's very similar to the other sort of ways of filtering objects that are being affected by something in ops. We'll come back and do custom groups in a second. So I'm going to click next. And then I'm going to filter. So we've got virtual machines. And then I'm going to filter on tag. So I'm going to say my tag category was shutdown. And then hopefully it should be true. And then we'll click next. And then I can choose when that's going to happen. So according to my time, it's 6:42. So what we'll do is today, browser time 6:42, 6:45. We can do it daily, weekly, monthly, or just one time. We're going to do one time. Actually, no, let's set up a schedule. I'm going to destroy this pod afterwards anyway. And I can run that daily. Or I can, again, if I had it weekly, I can run it over a number of weeks, or monthly, maybe once a month at the end of the month, a particular day, the last day of the month, run this. So I can really be granular about how I want to control it, and just going to do no end date. And if I had the email outbound plugin connected, apologies, I didn't configure that, then I could send an email about email about the job as it occurs. So this is the job, this has happened, and it's affected these virtual machines. So I'm going to create that object there. So it puts me a nice task in there. And then whilst that's doing that, we've got a few minutes. I'm going to create another one, which is power on VMs. And say virtual machines. We're going to go to actions. We're going to power on those virtual machines. We're going to add the workload domain in. I can be granular if I want to go down to the actual cluster. Then I could do that too. It's on the same thing, so I can drag a cluster down. They're all on the same cluster anyway. Virtual machine. Oops, sorry. What I was going to do on this one was, rather than using cluster, I'm going to go rogue, and I'm going to choose custom groups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an environment. This is one I created earlier, which was development workloads. And I suddenly realized that they're not all in there, so I'm going to choose development workloads across here. Hopefully I'm not going to break anything. And then if the object type is a virtual machine, and I can just say contains dev as an example. If I was a little bit more restrictive on my quick, hastily created custom group, I wouldn't need to do this. So long as it contains dev, so those two virtual machines, I'm going to power those on. What I'm going to do is actually I'm just going to power them both off through vCenter, just so that we know they're powered off. As you can see, that sort of HL snapshot VM is not powered off yet. Oops, sorry, close that. We're going to go to automation again. So here, again, I'm going to do it. Can I change that? I don't think I can do that at 48. Oh no, it has to do it every 5 minutes. Okay, so let's do it 6:50. To do the schedule, known date, we're going to create that schedule. So hopefully that should have powered off snapshot VM1. Has it done it there? That's the question. We may have to come back to it. Okay. It should have done it. It's active, power off VM. Okay. Okay, we'll let that run and hopefully we'll come back to it and it will have worked. But essentially, from an Automation Central perspective, scheduling task jobs, all available there. So we've got those running, and hopefully that should work. Maybe I got the tag wrong, but we'll see. Well, no, because it pointed out the right virtual machine. Cognizant at the time, I'm probably going to overrun yet again, and apologies. Let's have a look at what we're going to look at next, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so I'm going to create some basic supermetrics. Again, I shouldn't be too scared of supermetrics. And they can be really complicated, but hopefully we should give you an example that is relatively easy to do from that perspective. So what we're going to do is we're just going to create, have a very quick view of the canvas, and then we're going to create a supermetric using that count variable. And we can use sum as well, actually. Some might be better in this example, but let's have a look at that. Oops, wrong environment. Bear with me 1 second. Machine. There we go. Sorry about that. Multiple machines running in the background. I just want to see if it actually ran or not. For some reason it didn't. It's a little disappointing. It was working earlier, so apologies that I didn't. Maybe 27th. What's the date today? It's the 27th today, isn't it? Oh no, it's tomorrow. See, I've got it scheduled. I've got it scheduled for tomorrow, which is why I didn't power off. Let me edit that a second and just change the schedule to start today. But let's change it to, and we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. So what's that? 6:50. So we should turn them off and turn them back on again. Oh no, that should be updated. So it should be, yeah. So we'll come back and have a look. Anyway, okay. So supermetrics, really daunting or can be, and basically supermetric is a combination of multiple metrics. I've created one already, so we're going to go ahead and create another one. We're going to call this total undersized virtual machines. Now, what we're going to show is I want to create a view that has a list of so that the oversized and undersized metric is on a virtual machine. So if I go into the inventory, actually cancel this a second, go into the inventory, we'll have a look at a virtual machine. Let's call this, we've got one called dev. There's a metric on that particular virtual machine called is oversized and is undersized. Oh, it's a capital I, sorry. Hold on. or over 60. Oversized, and there's also one called undersized. So this is indicating that the machine, it's not telling us how oversized it is, but it's just indicating the fact that it is either undersized or oversized based on that metric. But that metric doesn't bubble up into, for example, a cluster. It'll tell me at a ESXi host level, but it won't tell me at a cluster level. So what we're going to do, and I've written a blog about it on my website, which is why I'm using this as an example. We're going to go and create an undersized metric. So total undersized VMs. And we're going to choose the object we want to apply that supermetric to. So it's not the virtual machine, this is the cluster, because that's where I want to see it. So we're going to choose cluster compute resource, and we'll click next. Now, this is where it starts to get a little bit complicated, but not too much. Don't be frightened. So we look at the functions. What do I want to do? I want to sum the number of virtual machines that have the undersized aspect. So there's sum, and the object type is virtual machine. And again, I can just type virtual, and then it'll show me virtual machine. And then I want to choose the metric that I need to collect. And this can take a little while depending on how many metrics there are on a particular object. Okay, right, so let's skip that. Forgot to type the capital I. So is undersized. Okay. And there. So as I start to write, I should start to filter, but I know which quarters there. Now, what's really important is, so if we can validate that successfully validates because it's the correct supermetric, and I can preview that, and I can choose the cluster that I want to choose. Now, as you can see, there's none. And that might be the case. But in this instance, I know that the object relationship between the cluster and the virtual machine isn't one depth, it's two. Because actually the virtual machine is on a host and the host is in the cluster. So it may be none anyway, but let's have a look. I don't think any of my machines are undersized, which is fair. But I know it's depth two. So I can click I can then assign that to a policy. Sorry, if I click next. So then I know, because the supermetric is essentially needs to be assigned to a policy, and it starts to add, and one thing to think about is it starts to add metrics to your database when you add supermetrics. Now, to show you that around the depth, so if I look at my oversized metric, again, compute resource, again, very similar formula to depth two. And if I had to preview, then I can see they're oversized. This is the cluster, and they're oversized. If I left that as default to level one, then what you'd see is there's nothing because there's no related metric. Because the cluster has a host, the host has a virtual machine. So which is why I have to change the depth to two, because there's two steps between the virtual machine and the workload. So as you can see, that's there. So I can update that, and that's my supermetric, and I can use that in views to configure myself. So that's a very simple metric. You can start to include where clauses and all sorts of things like that, and that gets a little bit complicated. But there are lots of resources out there that will help you build supermetrics, so don't be afraid. Let me switch back just before I move on to the next demo. And it's the last one. So thank you for those people who are stuck around. So, oops, sorry. So we're going to customize your view of the vSphere world. We're going to use those supermetrics we've just created just to create a view and put that on a dashboard. So essentially, you customize your view so you can be the man with the most knowledge, or the person with the most knowledge, sorry, and so you can be the smartest person in the room, because actually knowledge is power. So again, we're going to switch back. What we're going to do is we're going to create a custom list view. And then we're gonna add that to a custom dashboard. I've already talked about dashboard sharing. So let me just switch back to my lab environment. So we've got those two metrics there. I'm going to go into my dashboards and reports and then go to views. And there are multiple types of views that you can create. The majority, if I'm honest, the majority of the ones that I take or create tend to be list views because they're nice and easy to create. So a list view is essentially, as it says on the tin, it's a bit of a list. So let's call this cluster metrics. Um, Nothing to change there. Yeah, should be fine. Okay, so then we've got, again, this can be a little bit daunting to start with. All we're going to do is we're going to choose the cluster object here. Okay, now we can group by things if we want to. I haven't got a big enough environment to worry about. Here's my workload domain over the top here. And we can change that resource. But what we're going to do, see this flag here, supermetrics. We're just going to add in oversized. Now I think undersize is not there because it takes some time to start collecting. So it will be there eventually, but we're just going to use oversized for now. And what you can start to see here is 8. Okay, so otherwise that metric wouldn't be available. And if you look at the metrics here and you look for, I think it was on the summary, there is no other metric. If I type in oversized, there is no oversized thing. I can do ancestors if I want to, but again, there's no virtual machine. Okay, so I can't go all the way down to the virtual machine level. So that's ancestors, descendants will be under the virtual machines actually. But what the virtual machine will give me is the virtual machine would give me whether it's oversized or not how many virtual machines are oversized. That's the important part about the supermetric we created. So again, we can click next. You can change the time settings if you want to. I'm not going to bother in this instance. You can filter when you create a view. So if you had 100 hosts and you only wanted to show certain ones, or you had 100 virtual machines, you only wanted to show certain ones, you can start to filter on properties and metrics and have multiple filters to really filter down what you want to see in that view. And then if you want to have a summary row, you can do. Again, I'm not interested in this example. I just want to be able to have this view here that has my stuff in it. Now, what I actually might do as well is go back and add the data so we can add things like um, might want to add total capacity as an example. And move that around. I can change the capacity. By default, it's in megahertz. I can change it into gigahertz if I want to. And I can change the label. So this might be total capacity rather than CPU total capacity. I could just total capacity. If I could spell today, CPU. Okay. And so that's what will show then in the form up here. And maybe I don't want to call this, I want just this to say total oversized VMs. And again, I can add any of these metrics and I can transform those metrics. I mean, I could, if I wanted to, rather than have it current, I can have maximum, minimum. I can really start to change the way change the way that data is shown. Because we keep all of the metrics and all of the metric points, so you can do that. So let's just add that for now. And again, I could change colors if I want to for different things. If my oversized, I might thinking of things as I'm going through. Apologies. I might decide that sorry, that oversized VM. If I go back to configuration, I might decide that yellow is. It's okay to have 4. It's not okay to have 6, and if it's 8, it needs to be red. I can update that, and hopefully So now what you can see is I've defined what good or bad looks like in my view. So we've got that. I called it, hopefully I called it something rather than just, so I called that cluster metrics. Okay, that's good. And then we're going to go to very quickly, we're going to create a new dashboard. Now again, it can be really scary to start with. Don't be frightened of dashboards. They are can be really simple. You can clone existing dashboards. You can take bits out of them. You don't have to start from scratch. But I'm just going to add a list view into there, and then I'm just going to say my configuration here. Refresh content. Not really worried about that on this one. Cell provider means this is basically taking data from itself rather than being linked to something else, which is fine. All objects is fine, and I'm going to change this to cluster metrics. So the view I collected. That's cool, and then click save. Oops, I've done something. Okay, sorry, I need to change this to uh, be this will have to be the vCenter. Let's try vSphere World. I think, can I do vSphere World? I can't remember now. Yeah, okay, so save. So that's basically what stuff am I putting into the dashboard and then filtering it to come out. So that could be a vCenter. Here I just chose vSphere World. So I've got management domain, workload domain, total oversized virtual machines sitting in there. Now, if I wanted to, I can resize this a little bit. And if I wanted to add more things, so let's say a health chart, really simple. Not going to make any changes to the health chart, but what I am going to do is I'm going to link those two together so that when I click something in my list view, it's going to show me something in my health view. I'm going to hide interactions. So I can click on here and then this chart updates. And because I've only got a certain amount of metrics in there, it's only going to show me certain things. I could use scorecards. I could use anything that I really wanted to. I could use object relationship. Again, I can show interaction. I could just drag and drop, connect them together, hide interaction. And as I click on the different things, the two different widgets start to appear. And I can organize those wherever I want to. And again, I can save that as whatever I want to. And I can share that dashboard like we did at the beginning. Okay. Hopefully that has given you a quick overview of some good things that you can do in your environment, some easy things that you can do in your environment. And hopefully it will add value to your environment. Don't be afraid, would be my sort of suggestion. There's nothing you can really do. I say that, but there's nothing you can really do that will damage your environment in terms of your sort of your vSphere and stuff like that. Obviously, if you start powering stuff down, then different. But if you're just working with supermetrics and you're working with dashboards and views, it's a read-only thing. You're not doing anything. You're just manipulating the data. Okay. So that's it. That finally says to me, thank you very much for listening. Apologies if we overran. I think Carl's going to have a few slides, and while that's happening, I'm going to have a look at the Q&A and see if I can answer any of it.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Chris. So just move on to the next slide. There is a lot of power in VCF Ops, so I really appreciate it, Chris. It's really hard to try and squeeze all that in. And yeah, I think there may have been a few questions left in the chat. So if Chris isn't able to get to those during the next few minutes, then we'll get back to you if you posted them in the Q&A. So one of the things Chris did mention was the VCF Experience Day at the beginning of the session. So VCF Experience Days is another set of activities ran by the specialist solution architecture team who've been running this series. If you're interested to seeing if you can, or if you're eligible to be able to attend, please speak to your account director. The other thing was, hopefully some of you, or a good number of you, were able to make the UserCon last week. So the UserCon was a free event from the VMUG, held in the same location as the Explore on Tour. Again, was oversubscribed, really very popular, a lot of great content. The videos and session recordings are being put up onto YouTube at the moment. So hopefully by the end of next week, if there was a session which you weren't able to see because it clashed with something else, then feel free to go through to the either the link or the QR code for that. The next session is on Wednesday, the 31st of October. So we will update you with within a couple of weeks of the topic for that next webinar. Next slide, please, Chris. Thank you very much. I will call out again the hands-on labs. If you haven't seen the new labs in there for VCF now, I highly encourage you to go and look at those. And also, if you are a regular attender, feel free to spread the word on these. Really pleased by the attendees numbers, getting great questions and feedback coming through the surveys. So yeah, feel free to publicise it and share that. And just finally, please, if you get the chance at the end, please complete the survey. Like I say, if there's any feedback you had from Explorer or Tour or the UserCon, which you weren't able to register through the formal channels, feel free to put those in the survey and we can feed them back. So that just finally leaves me to thank you for joining on behalf of the Solution Architecture team, and we will see you next month. Thank you all. Bye-bye.